Why is it on me?
I don't know. Probably because you were
It's on
talking.
you now.
Great timing. All right. Welcome. Tuesday night. And as always, we welcome your questions, answers, and comments. So, tonight's topic is what is unhealthy fear? I'm working through a book right now that, the title's not really worth mentioning, but it's about a man named Sam Houston. And this is the guy who, for anybody who's interested in history, he's the guy who kind of led the retaliatory charge against Santa Anna after the massacre of the men at the Alamo. This is back in the 1800s. And so he led basically led the United States to victory over Mexico during that time. And so there's an interesting story about this guy. The story follows him from when he's a kid, obviously up into his adult life. But there's an interesting story about this man. He's a young man living in a very rural area, I think in Kentucky, if I remember correctly. But basically, this is like they're actually recruiting people during this time to go and fight against the British, and he's like, not interested at all, but basically runs out of money because he had started this school. He's about 18 years old. He had started this school, but he'd run out of money, and a lot of his students were joining up or going off and working their land and stuff like that. And so he had a lull in his income and decides to go and join the regulars. So he joins the regulars, but because he was, so he's 20 at the time, actually, 20 at the time. Because he was only 20, I think you had to be 21 in order to sign for yourself. He had to have his mom sign for him. And his mom, she's tells a little bit of her story beforehand, but his mom was like the only way I can think to put it is a man's mom. She was a man's mom. She was just one of those moms. But she's like, gladly, yeah. So she signs for him, but then she gives him this a ring as kind of like a talisman. You're going to keep this. If this is our family honor, you're going to wear it with you all the time. It wasn't like a good luck charm. It was like you're going to remember who your family is. And then she also gifted him a musket. And so when she gives him this musket, she says these, and this is his words, quoting his mom. She says, "Take this musket and never disgrace it. I would rather all my sons should fill one honorable grave than turn his back to save his life. And remember this too, while my cabin door is always open to brave men, it is eternally closed to cowards." Mm-hmm. Go off to war, son. So his mom's last words before he goes off to fight. But he took this to heart. Sam Houston was like, I'm not gonna fail my mom here. And so he ends up rising up in the ranks pretty quickly. Within a year, he's actually got a small platoon of men under him. And they go to quell this rebellion. And I think this is in 1812, actually. So this is like a little bit later in the War of the Colonies and stuff like that. But there's this Indian group of warriors along with some British soldiers that have basically holed up in this one area. And they've built this breastwork, which is essentially like a wooden wall, and it's a little bit usually a bit higher than chest height, and they had these portholes in it. And so one of the generals or the leaders of this military that he's a part of says, "I want somebody to go and charge that breastwork." And so Sam Houston looks around, nobody's rising up, and so Sam Houston, "I'll do it." And she goes, "Come on, men." And he runs out, grabs his musket, runs out, and he's going to go charge this thing. He goes up to one of the portholes, he starts trying to jack him up. He gets shot like 3 or 4 times, and apparently nobody followed him. So he ran up to this breastwork all by himself against a full force of enemy and gets destroyed. He lives, and so that the story goes on. He ends up becoming quite a guy. He ends up becoming president of the Republic of Texas twice, governor of 2 separate states, runs for Senate, and gets elected as a state attorney or attorney general. And with no formal education, this guy was just the man. And ends up lobbying for Andrew Jackson to become president. And I mean, just like all these things this guy ends up doing. And he lived through this. Now, when you just single down, and the reason why I'm sharing this, when you single down this one act, we could call it a brave act.
Yeah.
You could look at that and say, well, he was pretty stupid for that. He charges breastwork. Nobody's running behind him, and he almost gets himself killed. Very nearly gets himself killed. But on the other hand, if you think about like just history and you zoom way out, great men, great women, heroes were all men and women who would do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, you could say, well, he's pretty stupid. But on the other hand, could it be possible that maybe the reason we would look at it that way is that element of bravery is actually, not as common? So remember, we're talking about.
I do have something very.
We're talking about fear tonight, and it just leads me to a good question.
Yeah. Well, my personal opinion is people like that. They become like that because they make those kinds of decisions. They're not made of anything different than anybody else. There's absolutely no difference between them.
Fair enough. Okay.
It's just that other people are they're sissies. That's all. It's the only difference. There's normal people who are like him, and then there's sissies.
Yeah. So, and clearly there was a group of sissies behind him that decided not to.
Yes, exactly.
At the same time.
Exactly.
So,
Could you? I know if I was in that kind of situation and I saw a guy run out, it wouldn't even matter the danger. I'm not going to let him go alone.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to. Yeah. I don't care how foolish the idea is.
Yeah.
If he's that determined, and there's been a request made, it's like, I'm not going to. I couldn't live with myself sitting back with all the cowards.
Yeah.
And saying, no, that was just stupid. What he did was, and you hear people that are like that. They're ready to run people down. They have their recording in their head, that they just fill in the name of the individual. He was so stupid because he did this and did that and did the other thing and did the other thing, and so stupid, and that's why I didn't, because I'm smarter than he. No, you're just a coward.
Yeah.
You're just a sissy. That's
and I think that I could go, and I'm not even gonna say that. Never mind. I'll just not say that. But it does bring up a general question: is how should a person prioritize fear? And
prioritize.
And the reason why I say
thing.
the reason why I say that is because Matthew 10 verse 28 is a classic scripture on fear. But Jesus says, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Instead, fear the one." Who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So, first question, and then I'll pose this to the listener, is I was going to say, what are you afraid of? But I don't want to get your, typical, your token answer. I want to know, I really want to know what brings you fear. What are things that bring you fear? And I wanna just analyze fear from that perspective. What are things that bring you fear?
You know what's interesting about that? Because I'm trying to think of a better way of saying that will allow people to be able to communicate rather than the thing itself. Because that isn't, How about if you change that a little bit? Change that to.
I haven't posted it, so we can.
Okay, change that to. What are times when you justify being afraid?
Okay.
So the idea is not specific things. It's just what allows you to. How about just that? What allows you to justify being afraid? Period. That just like that. Not focusing on a particular thing, but just the mentality itself, because that really is the issue.
Okay.
And it's funny because I think about that just at a kind of a low level. I remember we went to Blackpool. I was in my 30s. We went to Blackpool.
Blackpool. What is Blackpool?
And Blackpool is the city north of Liverpool. It's like a theme park place. The Blackpool's known for, because Blackpool's not really big, but Blackpool's known. It has I think it has like a promenade. It's like not really beachfront. There's the north of England beachfront. There's nothing even to compare it to here. It's just hilarious to say it that way. Liverpool was a port city, and it's funny. It's like, as a friend of mine put, when he was in, he's from Australia, and he said He said, I went to the beach. I heard that there was a beach. I went out to the beach and I watched the coffee roll up on the shore. And I thought that's a perfect way of putting it. I mean, it doesn't even look
Wow.
like ocean. It's just brown water. The coffee rolling up.
It's kind of gross, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's funny
I mean,
because
we have the bay here, which
that's
is
England.
green, but
That's it. Yeah, so
least it's
that's what I was going to
colored.
say is that you can't. I mean, it's cold. The water's cold, but it still looks nice. I mean, this didn't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
look nice. This was just brown. It was just flat brown water.
that's nasty.
But no, so
But you went to
I went to
Blackpool.
Blackpool, and that was my first encounter with these free fall drop things, and I'm like, I don't want to go up there. You know, and so I can throw out my justification for fear, although the point of the story is that I overcame it, is when I look at it from the standpoint of engineering, how do I want to say it? The engineering risk. That's probably the best way of putting it. Where it's something that's a risk, like, you know, when I'm in an elevator, you know, that's a glass elevator on the side of a building. I can look out over the building, and I might have a little bit of queasiness about looking over the outside. You know, there's a big glass thing in front of you, though, and you know, it's fairly well structured. You know, short of something unexpected happening. You know, it's not like, oh, see, there's another elevator fell off the side of a building. It's not like it's a regular event, and so there's no problem there. But I can be up in a really tall building, which I don't know that I guess we probably do have here, but like when I was in China and have this railing, you know, that you can see that it's rusting on the sides and it wiggles, you know. And you're up 38 floors, and like my friend's wife, she leans all the way over to look down to see what's going on down there. And I'm like, oh my word, I can't believe you do that. That's crazy, you know, because I'm looking at this thing. What you're doing right now it's not structurally sound to do what you're doing, because that you could just end up over that railing, and there's nothing to stop you from going down 38 floors. You know, so stuff like that, you know, I allow fear, you know, to take over. I allow fear to determine, or I allow that to make me afraid of doing that kind of a thing, you know. So I don't know, you know. I mean, that is the thing. That's what I'm really getting at, is the idea of when do we justify fear? That's really what I'm talking about, because that for me is a justification of fear for me. I won't lean over a railing of, you know, I see these rusty bolts that I know they're gonna go at some point, whether it's 2 years from now or today. They're gonna go, and if I lean on it, I'm only, you know, challenging
Increasing
fate.
it, yeah.
I'm not. This is not a thing of just, you know, being, you know, a little bit risky. This is like, you're just talking about, you know, giving yourself a golden opportunity to end your earthly existence. But I'm in Blackpool, and so I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, okay, this is, you know, it's structurally sound. I mean, people have been on these, and there's tons of them around, but it's that free fall, you know, where you drop and then it pulls you back up again, and then you drop
Yeah.
again, and that, like the PlayStation. It used to be called PlayStation in what do you call it? Oh no, that's what it was called there. It was called PlayStation. That's right. I forgot.
Oh, you mean the drop zone?
Drop zone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was that kind of a thing. But I went on it because I thought, you know, I'm going to overcome this, and I went on it, and now I go, you know, now it's not a big deal anymore. When I get on it, I just resign myself to the fact that, okay, there is a risk, but I'm not doing this. It's not an ignorant risk. It's not like leaning over a balcony that's of a rusty balcony. You know, it's gonna fall. It's not an ignorance of the structural integrity of a thing. It's you know, it was designed. That's the reason why it exists is because they built it to be like that. Now, whether or not anything could go wrong with it, whether or not there's any risk involved in it, yeah, there is. But I just decided I'm not going to allow that to become, a point of fear for me, because I wanted to go on it. Other people wanted to go on it as well, and I'm like, I'm not gonna chicken out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. But it wasn't a thing of where I'm looking at this saying, you're all stupid for doing this. It was just me being conservative. That was really what it was. Is I'm just being conservative. I thought, no, it's gonna take a little bit of risk.
So I wanna kind of leverage your story right now, because the answers we're getting, these are good answers, but I'm hoping that we can be a little bit more practical from the standpoint of, like, everyday life that you're living. I'm not, we're getting answers. The idea that God might not be pleased with my life, obviously that's a good fear. There's a comment here: no OSHA in Blackpool.
Yeah, that's my wife. Yeah. Yes. There's no OSHA in Blackpool, but England is a first world country. It's not Spain. Now, Spain was a little bit different, but I did go in Spain. I'm looking at these rides and I'm thinking these are rides that it looks like it's this ball thing that goes up in the air, and you expect it to just go right into the ground.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
So who's figured all this stuff out? These two rubber bands on this metal ball that you're on.
So there's another one in here. The thought that my heart might not be right with him when he comes back. I'm just acknowledging that I see these, but again, I want to kind of challenge. I'm going to challenge these a little bit more, just so, because we have another one here that's very, very practical, and so let's go from this standpoint, because here's the reason I want to ask the question like this, is because we have a rational mind, at least some of us should. And so what you went through when you're looking at is your rational mind is working through all the possibilities of what could happen, what might happen.
Well, no. I mean, yes and no. I mean, not literally. I mean, but it's the whole general idea that something could go wrong. And
exactly,
I could be hurt.
So something's happening, even if it's in your subconscious, that something might happen bad.
Yeah, something bad might happen. Yeah, that's a. Yeah.
So
yeah.
But here's the thing, did God give man that mind?
Well,
that part of your mind.
Yeah. So that's we're I guess you're throwing me softballs right now.
On purpose.
Yeah. Because
I'll think of something difficult
because
later,
obviously,
no.
because the whole idea is the difference between, which you're going to probably stop me right away, is the difference between, God has given us the ability of fear, but the Bible says that God has not given us a spirit of fear.
I don't have that scripture in my notes. I actually was wondering if you would bring that up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because the whole idea, there's the balance. That's the balance of fear. There's a healthy fear. Like I said, I think the idea of, but it is speculative or relative to your understanding of things, as well, because I'm not afraid to look over a balcony, because we're high up in the air, and it's like, well, neither am I. I am afraid of looking over a balcony with a rusty guard that's in front of it that can't be trusted. So I would call that a healthy fear.
Right.
Not a, because, so like other things, like a fear of snakes, that's not healthy fear. There's nothing healthy about a fear of snakes or a fear of spiders. There's nothing healthy.
Now we're talking about levels of fear, though.
Well,
because there is a healthy level of fear of snakes.
No, there's not. There's not a there isn't.
If I'm standing in front of a rattler, there's a healthy fear involved there.
But that's not a fear of snakes.
Right, fair enough.
I'm afraid this snake's going to bite me, release venom, and kill me.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And but you're not afraid of snakes, because
I see what you're
that
saying.
fear is transferable to garden snakes as well.
Yeah,
It's not.
yeah.
It's not exclusive.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about.
So it's like a phobia. It's not a.
Yeah, it becomes a phobia.
Yeah.
There's a phobia that's associated with it. Like, so for me, like a fear of heights, it's like, that's why I qualified that. Said, I don't have a fear of heights. I have a fear of falling you know. But that's a healthy fear,
Yeah.
and I don't want to put myself in a position that can induce falling,
Right.
you know. And so being in an elevator and looking out the window of the elevator and looking all the way over, that doesn't put me at any more risk than being in the elevator. And saying I'm not going to go into elevators at all, that now we're on the realm of phobia, because now you're talking about something
Yes.
that is
Okay, so hold that
Okay.
thought, because we'll touch that a little bit more, because we're getting a bunch of answers in
All
here
right.
now. So, but yeah, the idea that there are certain things you don't do.
Yeah, so there,
because-
so there is a healthy fear, but then there is a phobic fear, which isn't, and our reaction, our reaction is to justify our phobia,
Yeah.
to make it sound like it's normal. But it's funny, because I'm just thinking about different situations I've been in where there's 4 or 5 people, or more even, of all different kinds of age groups that are all ready to do a certain thing, and then one person says, no, I'm not going to, and you can tell by the way they talk about it is that I'm not going to because I'm the only one that's intelligent in this group. Nobody else has the intelligence I have. And it's just purely a phobia, It's
Yeah.
just a fear. It's a phobia, and not willing to admit that you have that phobia.
Yeah. So okay, so let's work through some of these. There's this is because when I clarified and pushed back on some of the
Yeah.
spiritual answers, we got a good answer. She said, "Oh, okay, good. Haha. I was gonna say when I think someone is breaking into the house, but then I saw the spiritual answers." So that's what I'm after, and a lot of these other answers that have come in are great. So okay, so let's talk about this from the standpoint of rational fear, working things out. Is this a healthy fear or an unhealthy fear? Is a fear of when you hear or think somebody's breaking into the house, is that a healthy fear?
Not in my house.
Yes. Now, see, I love this. This is why I love answering questions, because you'll just say something that nobody expects you to say.
Yeah, not in my house, because I'm in my house, and you'd think that there was like 20 people living with me. The amount of noise that goes on in my house, it's just like I'll hear this bang, clang, and it's like, what in the world is that? And it's gotten to the point to where I don't even move anymore, because it's like I don't know what that was, but I know nobody's breaking into the house. It's and usually I think, oh, it's the cats, and then I'll look around. There's one on the couch and one on a table by the window, and it's like, so it's not the cats. So, but something just fell of its own accord somewhere. I don't know where or what it was, but it just happens so regularly that I don't even pay attention anymore.
Okay, so what if your house isn't like that?
So your question is the fear of people breaking in, right? So.
Yeah.
So, well, see, now we're bringing a whole nother dimension into this, because it's like, where do I want to go with this? Because I've got my own opinions about things, but they're not. I don't think everybody needs to think this way. But I've always noticed that people who, no, never mind. I'm not going to go. It's just not. It's not worth it.
See, now I really want to know what you're going to say.
Well, I'm in California. It has to do with guns and some of the things about guns, and I don't want to be I don't want to be stereotyped as being a Californian, anti-gun person. Okay, all right. I've gone too far. I'll say it. Okay, fine. No, I've just noticed that the people that own guns, because they're afraid that things are going to happen, that they're going to need a gun, they seem to tend to be the ones that need a gun.
Fair enough.
And it's like, I've never needed a gun. There's never been a time where I thought, God, I wish I had a gun right now. But I don't think everybody who owns a gun is like that. And people who talk about having protection for it, I think sometimes they're just justifying the ownership of a gun. I know people like guns, and I don't have a problem with that. I know that. But I'll tell you, when I have some of my friends in Arizona, and they come out, let's just put it this way: if the military ever needed weaponry, they just go to my friend, no problem. He's got plenty. But bring them out, pull them in pieces, take it out, and it's got a the whole front room is filled with different bits and pieces of guns and everything, and it's like wow, I mean it's like quite a hobby, But I mean I have I have like that, I have not guns, but I have things like that can fill a whole front room,
Yes.
of
Or
of
half a
things that
garage.
or half a garage. And so I understand, from the hobby standpoint, I understand, and I think most people are just saying, that idea. But the idea of protecting yourself against somebody breaking into your house, I think you're really teetering on phobia there. You really are, because I know what that's like. I lived through the these things that you don't hear of much anymore. Home invasions. That was the last thing that epidemically, these when I was in Arizona, there was a guy who was he was breaking into houses. And I remember being at, it was summertime, and so in summer we'd keep our windows open, knowing that there's people out there in Tucson that are breaking into houses and holding people at gunpoint and robbing them, and it was a regular occurrence. It wasn't like it was something that just only happened every now and then. It was a regular occurrence. You'd hear, 5, 6, 7 people this happened to, and they're still looking for the guy, and so. But it was a phobia, it was like I'm working it out in my mind. What am I going to do? If I'm not going to sleep. I'll just stay up all night, and then I'll catch him, when he comes in, and then he'll be caught off guard because he'll think we're asleep, and I'm going to beat the crap out of him, and then drag him out into the backyard and say, I don't know what happened. It looks like he tripped. But yeah, so it can become phobic, things like that. That's a teetering sort of thing. And I think there's a truth in that as well, even at the spiritual level. There's a being afraid, that God isn't going to accept you. I think most of the people that are saying that are probably saying that from the standpoint of more hypothetically than realistically. I don't think it's a day-to-day thing, but I don't think that that's healthy. I think that's a phobia as well, to have a fear, of going to hell, having a fear that, you're not going to measure up, that you're going to get there and God's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you. It's quite clear in Scripture that the people who do that, they have no idea that this is going to happen to them. And so people who are afraid that they may be that kind of person are not in the right mindset for that to actually happen to them, and so it's not going to happen to them. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking that way, but at the same time, the devil can capitalize on that, because we're not. That's that scripture. God didn't give us a spirit of fear. That idea of embracing what we would call a healthy fear, embracing a healthy fear. There just needs to be wisdom, just wisdom. Don't be stupid, And so that I think is, I think you can just blanket put it in the category of when it becomes phobic, when it's something that you have afraid of happening to you that alters the course of your life in an unhealthy way. Then you're looking at something that's not appropriate. I'd say that's probably the best way of describing that.
So let's get to a couple more of these. It's interesting. I'm trying to formulate a question around the difference between a phobia and a healthy fear. So don't lean too much on that, because I think that'll probably be a good conclusion to this whole thing. In about 20 minutes, I will remind folks that we have off-topic questions at 8 o'clock. It is 7:30 now, so just in a few minutes I'll mention.
Somebody had a question last week that got overlooked. Apologies. Can't remember who it was. I just remember there was somebody that.
Well, if you were it was about apologies.
No. I'm apologizing.
Okay.
I'm apologizing
If you-
for you for blowing it.
Sorry.
But there was a somebody was overlooked. There was a question that was overlooked. So you just want to be
Okay.
careful that.
If anybody remembers that question and you want to
Yeah.
toss it in again, great. And I do apologize about that. Okay, so here's another one. Feeling threatened by men when I'm out walking or hiking alone, whether justified or not. That fear is
Feeling
there.
threatened. Well, I don't know about feeling threatened. Being careful, yeah, but feeling threatened, like these, like that's all men, just looking for the opportunity to kill a woman, just looking for the opportunity, right place, right time, But yeah, so I wouldn't, but being careful, being foolish. I don't, I wouldn't, I wouldn't go walking around at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Oakland going, well, what am I going to do with this $1,000 in my pocket? Here's a thing called wisdom.
Okay, so let's see here. So this is a little bit more on the spiritual side, but we'll go ahead and we'll run with this because it seems like a very practical, honest question, and I appreciate the honesty. The idea that I'm going to continue to fight each and every day with the real me and keep him shut away, not letting any cracks or openings linger, because if I do, I'm afraid it will cause chaos in my life to the point of no repentance.
Yeah, that's phobia. You're not going to. That's a short-term problem. If I always talk about the idea that inside of us is a kraken. And the idea of releasing the kraken. If you're afraid your kraken is going to get out, then you're approaching this completely wrong, because you should be dealing with the kraken. You shouldn't be keeping him in a cage waiting for the opportunity to take advantage of you. I saw some video. It was funny, because I don't know where these things come from, but because they always come on the church accounts. I don't know what you're watching, but no, seriously, these shorts that show up, and there was some woman jumped the fence at a zoo, so she could go pet the tiger. And the tiger was in an enclosure, and so she went in, she puts her hand in, and the tiger was like, oh, I'm a kitty cat. And so she's petting him, and it's like, what am I doing? Turns around and takes a shot at her hand, and she pulls her hand out just in time. And the people are going, hey, get out of there, you need to get out of there, what are you doing? And so she gets out and jumps over and is like, I just want to pet the kitty. And it's like seriously, I mean, there's a place for, being wise, but like I said, it can't be a phobia. But you can't, that's a tiger. I mean, a tiger does what a tiger does.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't be having, a fear of, ourselves and what we're capable of doing. We should be the master. And it's I don't think of myself, as, Paul, Romans chapter 7 is if you just let that sink in, what Paul's trying to say, rather than trying to either justify your sin or, talk about how, he didn't have any control over himself either, or whatever, and just read it for what it really is we have a sin nature, and so you have to overcome temptation. But like I said, if it's a kraken, you're not dealing with it. You're not dealing with it, and you shouldn't be afraid. You should probably plan on what you're going to do with your life after you blow it. That's what you should be doing, because you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it as a Christian if you've got a pet kraken, and it's just not going to happen.
So let's think about, okay, here's another one. Yeah, my daughter becoming an addict or an alcoholic.
Yeah. Well, see, those are the kinds of things that are they are things that we're talking about things that I think you know uh, you know eh, it's two dimensional. We don't see all the detail of it, but that can be that kind of a thing. That can be a healthy thing. Is okay. I'm worried about other people, and so that will so you need to make that productive. That needs to be productive in your own life. It's just, you have to realize you cannot give yourself the luxury of doing stupid things, and that's so that strikes a chord with me, because when I got saved, I was single. I didn't have any kids, and I didn't want to. I had given up on the idea of having a family and all of that. And then when I got saved, the hope of having a family was restored. But then I started to see people who had kids who backslid. I mean, I say that, and I don't know. It's not really a fair statement to make. I'm not. I don't know that I actually even believe that anybody backslides. I think you have to front slide before you can backslide, and I think most people just never front slide. Is just that they're always in the back of their mind, always entertaining, the ideas of doing things they know they shouldn't be doing. But when you have that kind of a sober, I would call it sober, that kind of a sober thinking that, I don't want my kids to grow up, being like me, doing stupid stuff. Well, the answer is, well, then don't give them an example of you doing stupid stuff, And if it's too late for that, if it's too late, they're actually old enough and they've seen what you've, seen the stupid stuff that you've done. Repentance is powerful, and because my kids never saw what I had done, but they heard the stories, and I made it very clear that that was not. That was stupid. It wasn't. I never embellished it. I never glorified it. I never talked about. I'd hear people that would talk about their past, and they would. It's actually like, gosh, you're making me feel bad for you because you feel like you're missing out on so much now that you're a Christian. It's like they want to go back. And so, but be a good example for them. So let that concern, rather than it turning into fear, let that concern become productive. Where you're actually, okay, I'm gonna do everything that I can to because we, I should say, have an advantage of the stupid stuff that we've done, and escaping with our lives, being able to be proactive in, okay, what would have kept me from going down that road, and trying to emulate that. So I get the idea of it's, as long as it's not a consuming thing, where you're not, I'm just afraid this is going to happen one day, kind of thing, because that doesn't do you any good. Okay.
So, okay, I see your off-topic question here. I've put that in so I won't forget it. You just said something I was actually going to formulate into a question, but sorry, I shouldn't have chewed on that right now. But do you think, is it fair to say that the difference between phobias, we'll just classify all of them that way, and a healthy fear is the motivation of what it makes you do or don't do?
Well, phobia is the fear of something. And so the idea of being afraid of something, as opposed to, that's why I said it's, the questions are being asked on text, and so it's two-dimensional. How deep does that really go? Like when, raising my kids, I I would have probably used the term I'm afraid that my kids might be influenced by sinner kids and want to go off and do stupid stuff, but not it wasn't phobic. It wasn't a thing of where I didn't allow my kids to be around other kids.
Okay,
I didn't do those kinds of things.
So that's exactly, exactly. Let me push that question a little further, because now I'm the question is what did you do? Like, what's the thing that it motivated you to do? How did it motivate you to live?
Well, that's the thing is having an understanding of the potential pitfalls of life. You guard against those things in a rational manner, not in an irrational manner. To think, and so like before my kids were even school age, I had already decided, I'm not going to homeschool my kids, because they're just going to turn out to be weirdos, because I'd seen homeschool kids.
Yeah.
I'd seen how they were, and they were isolated, and so I was like, they're going to have to face this stuff. I want to teach my kids how to face this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want them to grow up and then have to, because they're going to, at some point, they're not going to live with me the rest of their lives. And so at some point they're going to have to go out in the real world, interact with real people, and they're going to have to learn how to deal with temptation and those kinds of things. And so I had decided my kids are not going to be homeschooled. Well, I learned, that there was more to homeschooling than just simply, keeping them away from, kids that would be a bad influence. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up, because they'd come home from school, and my wife actually it was my wife that had come home from a parent-teacher time, and was saying, how my kids are not, and at this point I think 7, 8 years old, something like that, and my wife said, I asked why they're not getting any homework, and the teacher said, do you expect me to stay up all night grading kids' papers? It's like,
Yes.
well, shouldn't I? Shouldn't I expect that? I mean, aren't you a teacher? And so I said, they're not going to learn anything here. And that was in England, and so it was like, they're not going to learn anything here. That's why these kids are all stupid. And so I said, we'll homeschool them until they get to older years. Because when we started homeschooling, they had a person who came. That was even funnier, is that they had a person who was like, his job was to go around and make sure homeschool people were being homeschooled. And I asked him, I said, so what's the criteria for homeschooling? He said, there really isn't any. And I said, so how do you know when somebody's violated homeschooling? And he said, I don't. He said, my job is just to go around and, if I see that people are not really educating their kids, then to teach them, or to encourage them to educate their kids, or maybe, put them back in school, and that's kind of his job. And so, but I told him, I said, it's not that we don't want them in school. I said, they just no homework. And he said, our school system doesn't work like in America. They'll get homework, but they don't get homework until they get to a certain grade level. He said, and then they're definitely going to have homework. And I said, that's just, no wonder so many kids drop out of school at 16. Is because they go into, they turn 16, they go into the next secondary school. They're in primary school, they go into secondary school, and then all of a sudden, they've got no disciplines, and so they're going to be kicked out, or they're going to leave, they're going to leave on their own, or they're going to get bad grades, and so they usually just end up leaving. So I said, okay, well, we'll just homeschool our kids until they get to secondary, and then we'll put them back in, which is what we did. But my point in that is just the idea of, not allowing your kids to be around other people is not the answer to them being Christians. I actually know families that they've done exactly that. They have isolated their kids. Their kids are not to have friends with sinners and stuff like that. And then they get to a certain age where, now they have a little bit more freedom, and that's when they start sinning.
Yeah.
But now they're doing it much more because it's like, wow, my parents have been keeping me from all this fun, because they didn't. If they had a few run-ins, when they're younger, kids come home. That's what I love about kids coming home from school, So I have a friend, she doesn't have a dad. How is that?
Yeah.
How can they don't have a dad? And it's like, well, this is why, because they're sinners, and this is what happens. They people do stupid stuff, and they can't keep a relationship going. And so it's like, do you want to not have a dad? That's what happens when you live that way. That's the result when you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to go down that road, you're going to have to get used to the idea of having sadness in your life all the time.
Yeah.
And so it gives opportunities. So phobias, and that's the problem with phobias, is that you never learn those things. It's like, like I know people. I mean, they're literally scared to death of spiders or snakes or whatever. And it's like, man, I mean, because my first thought is, well, what else are you afraid of? Because you're not going to tell me that that's just limited to snakes. That's the only thing they're afraid of. It's gonna work out into other areas of life, and it usually does. It's usually, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this, and there's all these restrictions and limitations. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to do this kind of thing. I'm not going to do that kind of thing. I'm not going to do the other kind of thing. And so, okay, so you become severely limited as to what you're going to be able to do in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So I'm actually, because I've thought about this before, and it's, it's an interesting phenomenon. I've shared the story about the time a cat scared me, and I just like froze up and couldn't breathe, and it was just like this really dramatic scene. But I was thinking about how often the issue with phobias is this issue of avoidance. You're afraid of something, so you just totally avoid it. You freeze up, you clam up. And I remembered a buddy of mine, my apprentice. We were doing these ball field lights, so like at a park, and we have these really tall lights. Some of them are 30 feet, some of them are 60 feet high, and you have to get into a boom lift to get yourself up there, and it's pretty nerve-wracking. I will say I'm not afraid of heights, but when I was younger, I really was. I had to get over it, so I did things to get over it. And so just, got to do what I got to do. So now I'm in a profession that's regularly what we do. We got paid so well for it. I was just down, whatever. I'm getting paid really, really well. I'm just going to get up there and do it. And so I was trying to get my apprentice to get over his fear of heights. And I told him all this. This is how you can do it. Strap you in. And when you force yourself to do it a couple times, you'll start getting used to it. You'll be more comfortable. You'll learn how to operate the machinery and stuff like that. And so I let him get up there, but I decided I'm not going to get in with him.
Yeah.
So him and his brother get in, and they go up, and they're probably about 20 feet in the air. He just totally freezes up. I can't move. I was like, you got to move. I can't. And so he just lets go of the joystick and grabs onto the rails and just wouldn't let go. And he says, my hands hurt. I said, loosen your grip. I can't move. And so his brother had to grab his hand and force his hand to slide out of the way, and his other hand to slide out of the way so he could get around and operate the thing and get them down. And so I remember looking at that, and I was like, wow, that used to be me. I used to I'm afraid, so I would freeze up.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is like everything you're saying right now, and then what Jesus is talking about, this idea of don't fear things that can kill the body, but fear what can kill both body and soul. And hell, he's talking about a motivation factor. There's a motivation difference here. Yeah. If you're afraid of the right thing, you'll be motivated to live the right way.
Yeah, and so so that's the thing is a paralyzing fear is what we're kind of talking about as a negative, but a proactive fear, is so that's, but they're not the same thing.
No.
Yeah, they're not the same thing. I mean, we do use the word fear, but they probably should be two totally different words.
What would you use instead of fear?
In the positive way?
Yeah, like what is the right? Is it respect?
Way?
Is it
healthy
reverence?
Respect? Yeah, healthy respect. Well, when it comes to God, that is the idea is having a reverence for God when it's in the when it's in the context of God, and what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about reverence. He's not talking about some kind of paralyzing
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah. So okay, it's 10 till or not.
Fear has
till.
torment. Is what the scripture says. That kind of fear, the spirit of fear.
Yeah.
Brings torment. So we shouldn't be tormented. It's okay to be motivated by things, but we shouldn't be tormented by things.
Yeah. So in everything that everything that was mentioned as far as fears and justification of fear, like you actually use the word wisdom. There should be a wisdom behind the decisions you're making. If that's a real risk, we'll call it.
Yeah, risk is a better way of thinking of it, because it's not. There's no risk of something bad happening to you by holding a garden snake. There's no risk there.
Yeah. Yeah. But according to Scripture, there is risk to those who don't use wisdom.
Yeah.
You're thinking about Proverbs when he talks about.
Well, there is risk, and not when he says not to have a reverence for God.
Yeah.
So that's more of a fear in that kind of concept. I would say probably stretching it a little bit, but the difference between a verb and a noun. When fear is just what you are, then it's probably going to end up being something that's more phobic than anything else. But when fear is a noun, it's the something that you possess in a like for God. It's yes, it would be a risk for me to not have a reverence for God.
Mm.
But not just it's not even just a risk. It's a guarantee. You're in trouble.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about in making the distinction between these things. Is the issue is what is the possibility of those things happening, through the normal course of life.
Right. So, what would you say is the right way to view every one of the things that that were mentioned on the comments of things that people are afraid of? What is the right way to view these things? Just in summary here.
Yeah. I mean, so the idea of somebody breaking in, and hearing noises and thinking, oh, that's somebody breaking in. I think the first thing should be, even if it was true, what are you really gonna do? Genuinely, what do you really think you're going to do? Because this is obviously somebody who's bold enough to do that. Is especially if they know your home is not. You're out. You're out. You're out insane. That person's more insane than you are. You're not. What are you going to do? But the other thing too is it's so hard to try to work through these things and to have some sort of blanket statement that you can make about them. But I think the bottom line is just being rational. Learning how to be rational is the most important thing. What can you do? What can you do? Do what you can do. Not, and being, and again, like I said, being rational. What is it? Like the statement about you walking by men and being feeling threatened, because you're walking by men. That's how much of that is how much are you dealing with reality, and how much are you dealing with it's just simply fantasy and your own thinking. Like I said, if it's dark or you're going somewhere, you're going to be traveling alone. It's like this book. There's a book. It's called the Anxious Generation, and it's a good book, and there's a lot of good points. But the guys, lets his kid go on a subway. I think he's in New York. Lets his kid go on the subway in New York. At 7, he's coming home. He's going to be coming home at 10 o'clock at night. And it's like, and he's only 9 years old, and it's like, and he made it. It's like, yeah, he made it, but that's It's not being wise, That's just plain not being wise, because it's not. It's more. There's more to life than just, trusting your kids. It's trusting 9 years old. I mean, even if you're like a perfectly, one of the most intelligent 9-year-olds on the planet, you're no match for weirdos, and Subway's filled with weirdos. It's like we used to take the subway in England all the time, when we were in London. But I'm always, looking around, making sure that, there isn't weirdos waiting, because those are great opportunities for, I mean, probably one of the biggest things is pickpockets. They work those places. And so you learn how to be prepared with a certain level of risk factor, how to deal with a certain level of risk factor. And, a 9-year-old kid traveling on his own, at best, he's going to be robbed.
Yeah.
He's somebody's going to grab him and and it's like I mean, because it's just opportunity. It's not like, oh, come on, nobody's like that. It's like, no, it is like that. It is like that. That's just the way things are. Was it the Olympics that were in
Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rio's known for
Yes.
and so people are out and they're partying. It's like, oh yeah, but it's the Olympics. It's going to be safe.
Yeah.
People getting ripped off.
Yeah.
It's like there's a there is a place for being wise. It's not, we're not, fear is not the opposite of wisdom. That's not what we're talking about. There's a place for being wise.
It seems like that is the issue, though, isn't it? Like it's what you do with whatever fear you're feeling.
Well, yeah,
Can you work
and
that
are they
thing
like there was a guy, he's definitely afraid of elevators, and he's a delivery guy, and it's like, how in the world can you be a delivery guy and be afraid of elevators? Like, you spend most of your day going up and down stairs all the time. You got to go to the 8th floor. What do? Well, I just go up the stairs. It takes me forever to get up there, but it's just that I have to do it. And I told him, I said, that's no way to live, man. And so I prayed for him, and I said, let's go. And we got in the elevator, and he's like, oh. He goes, okay, I'm going to do it. And he's like, you know what? I'm not afraid. Thanks, man. Thanks. I really appreciate it. It's like, I think you've helped me here. And so it's like.
That reminds me of that I don't know. Reminds me of a movie, a Bill Murray movie. Old school stuff.
But yeah, being afraid is not a way to live. If there are things that are in your mind that you're concerned about, well, do what you can to make things okay. If you're afraid of that people might break into your house at night, well, then make sure your windows are locked.
Yeah.
And your doors are locked. But if you're going to leave your windows and doors open and go, oh, I'm afraid somebody's going to break in, it's like, well, I would think in that case they're not really breaking in; they're just coming in uninvited. It's not quite breaking in.
Qualification here to the comment made about walking alone and weird men. Not all men, just the ones that act weird or crazy.
Yeah, well, that's again wisdom.
All right, 7:58. Off-topic questions. If you have any more, toss them in now, right now. Not when I say it's time to end. Okay, so the off-topic question. This is the one from last week.
Okay.
I asked for clarity about praying or not praying for people regarding the sermon about no faith to pray for.
Oh, okay. About no faith to pray for. Yes. So, yeah, I don't know about no faith to pray for. I'm not sure how that fits into it, but that particular sermon I was talking about is the Bible talks about how there's a sin unto death, and James says, I don't say to pray, or John says, I don't say to pray for that. So there are times where, we were just talking about that just before the thing. I said sometimes the comment that I had made is sometimes I have a difficult time praying because I know I'm praying for people to stop doing something that they want to do. And I have to honestly say that I don't pray with a lot of fervor like that. It's mostly my prayer is to just, deliver them over to Satan. Let the 2x4 thing, that I always talk about, is that if they're not going to take anybody's advice, then let them get their butt kicked, by their stupid decisions, and hopefully that will, bring some sense. So it's not that I'm not praying for these people. I'm just not praying for them, for God to do something beautiful in their lives. I want God to do something very, very ugly because they're stupid. And they
Yeah.
and they're going to end up in hell for all eternity for being stupid. And so, my prayer is, God, give them something that will shake them out of their stupidity.
Yeah.
So that's it, really.
Well, any other questions? This is going once. It is going twice.
That went fast.
I know. I looked at the clock. It was 7:30. I was like, man. Oh, sometimes the talking just goes. All right. Well, we'll call it a night, and we will be here again next week. And we appreciate you guys joining the answers. Appreciate you guys being. What about Bob? Yeah, that's the Bill Murray movie. For anybody that was interested. But yes, we will be here again next week. And as always, we have our midweek service. We'd love you to join us in person. If you're watching this after the fact, you have questions, comments, you can use the comment section for that. We do get notifications for that, and so we do welcome that. Don't be afraid to chime in. And otherwise, we'll be here again next week.